Hi, this is Joe Polish, and I am here at my office with my good friend Tracy Parks, Simplicated, which means you're a person who has an expertise in helping probably everyone, but I kind of think of the entrepreneurial world as being more organized, dealing with overwhelm, you know, physical, digital, all that stuff. So what's a quick bio of who you are and what you do?
What I do is help people offset the challenge that most everybody has these days managing information. There's about 50% of the entire knowledge worker force that says that they're incapable of managing all the information that they're called to manage, particularly in the digital world. And so if every time you walk into your office or access your computer or your cell phone or paper information, then you're faced with a decision, and the ability to make that decision is going to be based on the capacity of those areas being cluttered or cluttered free. Otherwise, you're going to be very distracted making a decision as to where to focus your time and attention.
Gotcha. Well, so I first met you through my dear friend Barbara Hemphill, who I'm also going to be doing an interview with. And you said this statement to me when, I don't know how many years ago this was. I love this line. You said, "Is the juice worth the squeeze?"
The squeeze.
Yeah. And you were helping me think through what should I do with a pile of paper, you know, and I'm one of these people that has the sort of the psychological makeup of a hoarder, although I think of it as the stuff that I hoard are like sales letters and marketing promotions and campaigns that I can see the seeds of opportunity in them. It's not just junk. It's not like I'm collecting like piles of lint or whatever. You know, I mean, I hold on to stuff because I see some value in it, but my ability to really know if I can actually do something with it is always questionable. And so I first met you just trying to help myself get better organized. And so what I'd like to talk about today is all the people out there, and in my audience is typically entrepreneurs, very busy, crazy schedules. I want to talk about not only the physical world of the space they live in, but also the psychological world and what leads to somebody kind of having organization, being organized, having, you know, productive workflow versus complete overwhelm, not knowing how to handle it. And so where do you start? I mean, when you go and meet with somebody, what is like the foundational stuff that someone needs to have in place in order to become more effective?
I think my initial response to that would be a sense of direction, overall direction or purpose of where they want to go with their life or with their business. And then a conversation around what they're doing now to move in that direction. And probably, I think what pops into my mind, Joe, is there are so many other distractions that are not bad distractions. I mean, they can be bad distractions. You're going to choose the best or you're going to choose the very best. And so helping people create attention management that keeps them moving towards the goal that they really want to go for, rather than all the other peripheral information and inputs that sound really enticing, and I'm as guilty as anybody else is. You know, everything creates ideas, and everything, you know, creates something that we may want to do or may aspire to do. And so, how do we honor those inputs in our life and give them a place that they can be, just in case we want to go back and reach in and get them, but at the same time keep moving towards the goal that we've actually set. So to circle back around to your question, just like in a paper world where there were certain systems and tools that you put in place to manage paper information that came in, today it's more important to manage the digital information. So all the digital inputs, and where are they coming from, and how are you making decisions about, oh, am I going to focus my time and attention over here or not? And if I am going to save that, where am I going to capture it, and how am I going to go find it if I do want to use it again?
Gotcha. Okay, well, I want to talk about what you actually do for people. Who hires you? Who needs to hire someone like you or hire you, versus if someone, you know, if they don't, where do they start, sort of thing. So, and there's so, I mean, I could probably talk to you for like a week about all the different things related to organization and just digital management and areas that I don't have a clue about, and somewhere I kind of do, but I see a lot of quicksand out there, and there's many different forms of it. So first, who's like your ideal client? Who are the people that typically seek you out, and why?
The client that is struggling focusing their time and attention on the work that matters most. And they know and they have identified the work that matters most, but there's too many other peripheral things that are vying for their time and attention. And the end result is, even when they're focused on the direction that they want to go, their ability to find the resources that they need to get there are buried in digital repositories that could be on their phone, on their computer, on their tablet, hanging around in the cloud. So there's this exhaustive amount of time reaching into all those different repositories, saying, okay, where did I put that? Oh, I think it's over here. And so it's when they get to a point of pain where they are basically saying there's got to be a better way to do this, and it's worth my investment of time or their investment of time to clear the clutter and get a fresh look at the assets that they do need to keep, the knowledge, resources that they do need to keep, and then position them so they're able not only to find those when they need and access them, but also helping them get in a position to make good front-end decisions so they don't end up in the same place a month down the road or 6 months down the road.
I mean, you said pain. I mean, I think most people in this particular situation, it gets so overwhelmingly difficult and annoying, or they just miss a gigantic opportunity or something happens. I don't think most people kind of seek out this sort of work out of, oh, you know, wake up one day, I think I'm just going to get more organized. It's usually they're under some sort of crushing situation.
And it's very stressful. I mean, I think the clients that I've worked with, that's one of the comments that they'll say is not only the productivity increases, but it's just kind of this decrease of stress, of knowing where the things are that they do need to access and how they can find them.
Okay. So here's what I'm thinking to be most useful to the people that are watching or listening to us. I want them to know that there are people like you or people like Barbara Hemphill that you actually can hire or get recommendations on who to hire from everything from just consulting and philosophical understandings to literally going in and doing this stuff and getting their hands dirty and actually helping you trudge through and, you know, unmess the mess that you have, you know, in front of you or that you've created. So I'd like to talk about that, like, you know, when should someone seek out outside help? And then I'd like to go into just things that could dramatically improve everyone's lives, from their digital management to everything. So I'd like to almost start with, you know, if you need a doctor, here's what the doctor's going to do, but, you know, here's some things you can do afterwards to just stay in tip-top shape, sort of thing.
Okay, and can I focus or maybe narrow the response to that question in a digital realm?
Absolutely.
I think some of the signposts that we see in regards to digital clutter are a cluttered digital desktop. You open up the desktop and there's clutter everywhere. Or when you're in a position where you're not archiving or backing up digital information, people tend to create a lot of clutter that way, and you end up with a lot of duplicative content.
I'm just going to laugh because I'm the sufferer of that sort of thing, yes.
Okay. Kind of disconnected repositories, and I think I spoke to this a little bit. It's like all of these different places where we're storing stuff and stashing stuff, and the latest great app, and oh, I'm going to put, you know, this information over there. But there's no connectivity between those. Yeah. So then you, as an individual, goes in to try to find something, they have to, you know, productivity goes way down and stress goes way up as they're trying to remember, oh, did I put it over here? Oh, no, I think it's on my phone. Oh, I think it's on this. I think it's in Evernote. You know, and so that disconnectedness creates a lot of stress. And so that's another signpost, I guess I'm saying, for a lot of people to go, all right, you know, I get this. So the duplicative content, the overflowing email inbox is pretty standard for many folks. It's a rare time that I'll meet to somebody and then they'll say, oh yeah, I don't have any problem with email, or you know, it's always empty, or I get to inbox 0 at the end of the day. It's a great thing to aspire to, but anyway, big hole, big time waster in terms of the overflowing email inbox.
Other than people that are experts at that, it's almost like that's what their livelihood is. I hardly meet anyone that has a handle on that. I mean, maybe 1 out of 500 or something. But most of the people that I know, not only do they have that problem, they don't even want to talk about it, because I think there's a certain level of not wanting to admit that, you know, their email inbox, as an example, is out of control, or their digital life is out of control.
Has 40,000 messages sitting there, and you know, yeah. And then particularly, and Joe, what you brought forward is there is so much out in the digital realm, so much knowledge, and if you thirst for knowledge and you hunger for knowledge and you hunger for ideas, such as a gentleman such as yourself, then we invite all of this information into our lives. Oh, I want to read this article. Oh, this is the latest, greatest podcast or idea or concept around whatever profession or scientific discovery, whatever it is. So we kind of open the doors and say, oh, let this stuff stream into our lives. And then there isn't a way for us to make decisions about how to accurately get rid of them. And I think probably what I would speak to in that regard is technology is so helpful with that,
right,
in terms of creating procedures around information that comes into your life. You may be saving it in a certain folder. I'll pick on you for a minute.
Okay, pick on me all you want.
Yeah, all right. So you may be saving things in a folder. They're coming to you via email. You save them in a folder. There you're to read or explore or get ideas someday. All right, well, what would happen if you kind of set an auto delete rule, or dump the contents of this folder at the end of 60 days or 90 days or something like that? That's going to position you to let go of some of those things that you're realistically never going to get the opportunity to go back and examine.
Right.
So those are just a couple of ideas that leverage the technology that you have to support honoring what you're letting into your life, but at the same time giving a way to kind of let it out the back door.
This brings up a thought of just saying no. I mean, part of keeping a lot of, my friend Ariana Huffington, she said, she has this line where she's like, sometimes the best way to complete a project is to get rid of it, just to dump it. And psychologically, I think that's hard to do. It depends, of course, on what it is and who it is and where they're at. But like you just said, if you set up the technology to automatically dump something after 6 months, I'm sitting here thinking about that in my own life. Although that sounds like a very subtle thing, that could be a huge thing. And it also creates sort of a time pressure where, you got a certain period of time to go through this, and if you don't, it's gone. And I rarely put myself in those sort of conditions. I mean, I definitely put pressure on myself, and I work with deadlines, and I'm certainly a person that, takes on, a good deal of stuff. I mean, I have a high tolerance for certain types of pain, but I don't do things like that. And so, but it's very smart. So the question is, how do you do that intelligently versus how can you set things up where you're literally losing stuff that you can never access again? I mean, how do you walk someone through that setup?
Well, I think to jump off and answer that question, we're here and glad to be here in Phoenix because I'm attending and was speaking at a conference this morning for the National Association of Professional Organizers. And I team taught with 2 other folks, Jocelyn Coverdale and Lori Vanderkraal, and our focus was saying, here's what you want to do, here's 5 steps that you want to take, big picture wise, to position yourself to create an environment where you can retain your digital sanity. And the first one was decluttering all the places where you currently have things, just as you would go in and clean out an office that was really cluttered. So there's all sorts of technology that you can use to declutter an environment, and that's the desktop and the email and the folders and the repositories. And once that's been done, then you create a structure, which is going to vary for an individual, their preferences, the work they do, their lifestyle. What kind of digital folder structure is going to work for an individual? For some folks, and if they're in a large corporation, maybe for legal requisites and other things like that, they have to have a certain file architecture that's mandated legally or professionally or whatever. For others, the idea of, I'll be specific with email, is like if you just had one folder where all of your email that you've looked at and decided you want to keep, it just goes into this one folder. You call it reference or process mail or whatever it is. Then you've got one place to file things, one place to keep something, rather than this is where the juice worth the squeeze sort of thing. Rather than this exhaustive folder structure, then you have to maintain, and then you have to remember, oh, I stuck it in here. Oh, no, I didn't. I stuck it in there. So that's kind of the decluttering, setting up the structure in all the different places where you're storing information. And then really consciously thinking about what you do as you capture information, as you capture it on your smartphone versus your voice recorder versus a piece of paper or a Post-it note, and they collect everywhere. As you capture all of those, what sort of decision-making process and what sort of workflow process are you going to put in place to process all those incomings that you just captured and effectively move them into either a place that needs to be filed or an action management system or TOS. You know, that's another huge thing that folks need help with, or maybe permission in some cases. If we're looking at a corporate environment, a corporation giving permission and guidance to their 10,000 employees about what they really need to save and what they can let go of. Otherwise, they're going to save it all. So the processing piece and then the findability piece of how can you leverage your technology to find the things that you need when you need it. So in a really broad stroke, that's what this team, the three of us, have developed that approach to go into an individual when they have reached the point where they're saying, hey, there's got to be a better way, and they see the lost productivity cost in hours and stress. But if you equate that and monetize that, it's a tremendous monetary toll on an organization, from a small business to a multi-million-dollar corporation.
Right.
The amount of time people they're spending 50% of their day between processing email and looking for digital information. It's estimated that 50% of their day is spent in those two areas. So if you can improve productivity by 10%, you're recapturing like a day a week per employee.
Right.
I mean, it's huge. Yeah.
I mean, it's completely huge. I mean, the opportunity costs that, you know, certainly I have experienced being in a state of limbo or distractibility, or where do I put something, or where do I find something. I mean, I can't even put a price on it. It's not just, you know, the opportunity cost in terms of time and what I could be doing. It just makes me incredibly agitated. I mean, being disorganized just breeds anxiety. I mean, it sucks.
Yeah.
So
Highly stressful.
So going back to my question about
Starting
someone
point?
hiring you,
Okay.
I want to cover that, because what does it cost to bring in a world-class expert to literally go in? I mean, because I know a lot of people that listen and watch my, you know, my interviews. They run big companies. You know, I have a few billionaires that listen to my stuff, and they are going to hire someone every opportunity they can to come in and set the stage, set up the systems, fix it. And then there's other people that are like, I'm not letting anyone touch any of my stuff. I've got, you know, private journals that, you know, have my deepest, darkest secrets. I mean, you know, so let's kind of cover both realms. If someone wants to invest money in it, what are they looking at? How do they approach it? That sort of thing.
And do you want me to
And you
answer?
can plug the heck out of yourself all you want. I don't even care about that. I just want to give a context for people that are watching.
Okay, because I was curious if you want me to address it from a industry standpoint and a personal standpoint, or okay.
I
You
do a
gave me
combination of
freedom, right?
both.
All right.
Yeah.
So I think the best way I could answer that question is some folks just kind of need a little bit of creating a vision for what they could do. And you know, they may be spending $250 to have sort of a discovery session and sort of get their mind wrapped around where they need to go, and then they're off on their own. I mean, once they kind of so you know, there's that point, all the way up to a corporation who would be wisely investing, in my opinion, in ongoing training and productivity training on an ongoing basis for their organization. So I think, and Barbara Hempel, I know she'd agree with this, on staff someday is a productivity consultant that is working with the folks one-on-one in terms of helping them corral information and better manage their information and develop workflow. So there's some folks in our industry that are doing that, being on retainers. You know, there's a couple of clients that I'm on a retainer with that I'll just spend a devoted amount of hours with them per month. And it can be around a project. This project's derailed, and can you help us find some, you know, get this thing back on track, versus we have an individual on staff that's really struggling with their digital their email specifically. Can you do a little coaching with them?
Right.
And so there's those types of opportunities. If I was to say like a price point for somebody in terms of having somebody come into an office and spend a couple of days, to get somebody, I think, that's going to bring you high value, an individual's probably going to spend between $4,000 and $6,000 a day to invest in that.
Yeah. Good. No, and I want people to know that too, because I think it's the worst thing is to have a problem but not even knowing where to go or that someone can fix it. I mean, I think a lot of people are not even aware that there's individuals out there that you can actually cut a check and they will come in and solve the problem. And so I've always loved my dear friend Dan Sullivan's line, which is, if you have enough money to solve the problem, you don't have a problem. So the best problems to have are the ones you can cut a check and make them go away. And then there's the other problems in life where, like Jim Rohn says, you can't hire someone to do your push-ups for you. So there are certain things you just can't hire someone to do. You just got to do them. But this is one of those where you can get assistance and help. So I'd love to have you rattle off just strategy, if you could. Let's start with the desktop, like a computer. Maybe look at smartphones, whatever. But you have a cluttered desktop. Things are everywhere. You don't have a filing system, or you have at best a very mediocre one, and you want to be stealth. You want to be a ninja with finding stuff, putting stuff away, and stopping the madness. Where do you start? What do you do?
If you kind of poll people, in fact, the group that we had this morning, we were kind of polling, all right, where, challenging them, where would you start? And this is professional, organizing consultants. Where, we know we've got clutter, because we all have clutter somewhere. And it was kind of like email and the digital desktop. So digital desktop, there's some strategies, certainly creating a folder on the digital desktop and taking everything that's on the desktop at the present time, putting it in that folder, having an agreement with yourself that over the next 30 days you can pull things out of there if you're really going to use them, and then consider them homeless. So you need to find a home for them.
I like
They're
it.
They're not going to sit on their desktop
All these
anymore.
homeless, all these,
okay. All these homeless, they don't have a permanent place to go and reside. So they need to find a home.
Yeah.
So finding a home, at the end of 30 days, you can give that, the other folder kind of a once over and see if there's things you can delete out of that, or you could even tuck it someplace and look at it in 6 months, right? Because there's this balance of anxiety in terms of, what if or what if. And so that's a strategy sort of for that. There's some tools that you can use to declutter the desktop. One, they're going to love this probably. One's by a company called Stardock and Stardock.com. It's called Fences.
Okay.
And it corrals digital desktop content into groups that you can kind of fence around in different kind of containers, for lack of a better word. And so you can put a container over here for current action that routes you to your current action folders, versus reference, versus, this is the fun and games or that sort of thing. So you can corral content that way. You can create visual backgrounds where you can create your own ways to kind of organize content on the digital desktop. And then the other side of that is, okay, what got you here in the first place? And so that's about, at least from my opinion, that's about workflow and looking at current state. I'll use terminology from what's known as a lean office. And so lean office terminology would say, let's look at the current state of how you're doing this now so we can see how all this stuff ends up on your desktop.
Right.
And then let's look for ways we can improve and prevent this in the future. And so if folks say, well, the reason I put it there is because if I open it up and put it in my digital folders, I'm never going to find it again.
Right.
Oh, okay, so here's a place for improvement. Let's go look in your digital folders and create a very intuitive structure that the homes that you would place those things in. So you're looking at the current workflow, how that stuff ends up on the desktop to begin with, what you can do to improve that process, and then everything's a process. Every process can be improved. You just keep further tweaking, further tweaking, further tweaking. So, example.
No, that's great. So what I'm thinking of is, how often do you run into people that have just lost things because they didn't have it backed up? Is this like happening a lot, or is that a real rare sort of thing?
Oh, no.
Because organizing one thing, but in the digital world, what I think is, especially people like myself that kind of grew up when there was black and white televisions, and then there was, rotary dial phones. I remember all that stuff, and pagers and 8-track tapes and cassette tapes, and you see all of the digital evolution to now where, most people walking around with, tablet PCs, computers, no CD drives, things like that. I mean, it's the form in which media, exists is constantly changing, and you know, with the cloud, a lot of people, they don't hold on to it like you would hold on to a cup, you know, and if you don't back this stuff up, or worse, someone actually gets in and hacks the system, you can literally be devastated. I mean, I have several friends whose companies have almost been destroyed for either, you know,
There's no backup or archiving
yeah,
procedures.
they
in
have
place.
just lost things that are so valuable, and usually people don't take precautions because it's, you know, being in the marketing business, it's hard to sell prevention. But this is such a critical issue. So how do you address not only the organization of it, but also making sure that people's stuff is safe?
I'll answer that. Let me respond to that in two different ways. From a personal standpoint, in terms of people losing things, it's often more about it's there in their digital resources somewhere. It's can they find it again?
Right.
And so if 50% of searches for initial information will be unsuccessful on a first attempt and a second attempt from a personal end user standpoint. Now, from a catastrophic loss, in terms of lack of a backup procedure or an archiving procedure, I think what the concern that you spoke to very well is it can destroy a company. It can, you know, it can cut the feet right out from underneath them if there is a catastrophic loss, or if I look at the value, you know, if you can put a dollar value on the knowledge that an employee brings over a 1-year period of time, or 2-year period of time, or 5-year period of time, or 20-year period of time with a company, and they retire, or they retire, then what happens to all those knowledge resources that are there? Traditionally, it's like, oh, well, there was really never structure in it. We don't know what to do with it. We'll just park the computer over here, and pretty soon, you know, all of this knowledge this valuable knowledge is no longer used and no longer accessed, which is really a shame. Probably the other way that I would just maybe short answer your question is, if you personally are not backing up your information, or your company's not backing up your information, take steps to do that. Yeah. Back it up in terms of catastrophic loss, and then also create archiving procedures for yourself or your company where you can take content that is, it may be valuable content, or certainly was valuable content at some point. You're not ready to let go of it yet, but you archive it into an external drive, or you archive it into a cloud-based repository, so it is not part of your current work, and you're not having to dig through all that digital content to actually get to the current work that is most important for you right now, this time and space.
No, and you know, I think usually what'll happen when someone starts paying attention to that is they literally have to have, you know, they either get a computer stolen or something, just, you know, it just crashes, and they either can't retrieve it, or they have to go through so much to do it that they start realizing, wow, you know, this we need to look at different ways of doing this. And it's more so as a company owner, you really have to look at what other people in your company and organization are, because the whole world today is so digital. I mean, that's where things exist. And if you think that people are just backing it up, or that's being organized, like you're saying, if you have a key person and then they leave, but there's no organization system where someone passes away, you know, anyone that's had parents that have passed away, I mean, how do you, go, you know, it's hard enough going through paperwork, let alone how would you ever decipher what's in a computer system? So setting the stage for keeping track of stuff. I mean, I have probably, it's probably cost me a fortune with past video content of people that I've had that there was never an organizational system in place, and then we just no longer, that person doesn't work for me anymore, and we can't make heads or tails out of what this stuff is. So, you know, a lot of this I'm asking just for my own personal.
And so there you're talking about creating a universal understanding in a small business or a team around what are the standard naming conventions, what are the how are we going to name a file? Are we going to use a date and a naming convention? Are we going to use things such as version 1, version 2, or draft, or are we going to abbreviate agenda? Are we going to abbreviate meeting? All of these things where there's a universal understood language. Otherwise, somebody's going to say, oh, this was our team meeting notes from July, July, 2014, versus somebody will say, MTG, and then they'll use 06, 2014. All right, so it's all different. Everybody names things differently. So creating that universal language and agreement around naming conventions and version control
Yeah.
is going to prevent that. And then, because what you're speaking to also is succession planning. If small businesses in particular, you know, their ability to get top dollar for a business if they decide to go sell it is going to be predicated on this succession of how well they have organized their digital assets, so that they can hand it off to somebody that could actually get up to speed without investing, you know, a year trying to figure out what all this stuff is and say, hey, I'm not even going to use this, I'm going to start from scratch.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Well, so what do you get the most joy from when you go in and you help someone and you set something in place and it fixes it? What produces the biggest bang for the buck?
Me personally, it's the satisfaction of somebody genuinely saying, this changed my life. Mm-hmm. My stress levels have gone down. I'm able to focus on the work that matters most and make choices to move my business forward. That's my personal.
So let's go with the line of the work that matters most. When I get overwhelmed, my ability to prioritize drastically goes down. Yeah. And the more stuff I have to look at in a desktop, you know, that's why I always think that email, as an example, is the ultimate form of multitasking, because you're looking at multiple different decisions all vying for your attention. It's like a bunch of screaming kittens, let's just say kittens, you know, that are like yelling, you know, pay attention to me, pay attention to me. And there's that saying, you know, the squeaky wheel gets the oil. But I have a friend, Peter Diamandis, who says, you know, the squeaky wheel gets replaced. And the more that I hang out with very successful people, when it comes to how they manage their time, a lot of it is just time management by attitude. I mean, you can, you know, David Allen, you know, is a personal friend of mine. You can GTD things to death. You can, you know, do all kinds of stuff. And that's, you know, there's a lot of incredible usefulness with how you process and where you process. And I also look at some people that are just very wealthy, very productive, but they don't seem to have, you know, a tremendous amount of quote-unquote structure. But what they do know is what's a gold coin, what's a bronze coin, what's a silver coin, and they know how to focus on stuff like that. So my question is, knowing how valuable something is, if someone doesn't have that ability to prioritize, no matter how organized they are, I could almost see the OCD nature of trying to get everything set up, but you know, it's like the Peter Drucker quote, there's nothing more useless than doing really well that which need not be done at all. So how do you help someone be able to look at something and say, this is important, this is not, or this is more important than this, and let's focus on that and let's keep that in your head. Have you been able to successfully teach that?
I think so. I think what comes into play, and you use the term time management, and more often we hear it termed as attention management, because I think that's a lot more accurate.
Or even energy management. You know,
attention, exactly.
Yeah.
So even your ability, when you go into your email inbox at a certain point in your day, your ability to make really good front-end decisions on what's important and what isn't, and what's a distraction and what's noise and what's high-value content is probably going to be, you'll have a lot higher ability at one point in your day than you will in the other. So it's helping somebody realize there are certain times in their energy cycle where they're going to have kind of this proactive attention, where they'll really be able to make good front-end decisions about the work that they're working on, versus sort of that inactive attention where your energy kind of wanes a little bit, and that's not a really good, it's probably not a good time of day for most people to go, well, I think I'll just go float back to the inbox and see if there's something there interesting. Yeah. Instead, it's like positioning them for the things that they could do, and maybe their phone calls, to maybe hook them back into a little bit of energy, or they, you know, they have some sort of a system where they go over and during an inactive attention moment, they're able to kind of execute on things that are still moving their business forward, rather than kind of just getting distracted with something that's going to be a rabbit trail and rob them of more energy. So that's, I think, one of the ways that I would answer that question or answer that problem. And it also has to do with time blocking. I think one of the big tools that folks that I know that have been very successful and are very successful that you speak about, they're really clear on the goals where they're going, and they're really clear on what to say no to, as you said, that, the different value of the different coins. And then they also have some sort of a way, some people can do this sort of without a lot of structure, but the David Allen methodology would be putting some structure to, if you have these goals and you have these steps that are moving you to those goals, and these steps, if you back up even further, are then further delineated into tasks, so that when you go to execute those tasks and they're phrased in a way where it's a verb and you need to call somebody or review this or whatever it is, there's the tasks that are executing towards the goals executing towards the projects. But when are you going to get up once a week and do, David refers to it as a weekly review, where you say, oh, am I still headed in the right direction?
Right.
Or do I need to make a decision, or did I get a little off track? Or in this day and age, those goals are so fluid. It used to be a point in time. I'll go back to, I was there all those times you talked about, all the places where we've come digitally from the rotary phone. It's like it used to, we had a goal and the world didn't change very fast. And so if we had a goal out here, we would step by step move towards that goal.
Right.
Well, today, that goal can change in an hour, in a nanosecond. And so it's like regrouping, kind of circling back to what I was saying about successful people. They have some sort of time they have dedicated during their week to do two things. Weekly review, am I on track and headed in the project? And then also kind of that, what I would say, reset, or that administrative time where you can, with your digital resources, with your task list, with the notes that you've made to yourself, kind of process them back to bring them to a level of input where you don't go into the next week with hauling the luggage cart of stuff that you didn't do last week into this week, and just keep picking up luggage as you roll into the next several
It's like a big
weeks.
blob. It just kind
It
of
keeps following this
Yeah.
amorphous blob.
right.
Yeah.
So let's talk about your favorite tools. Like, what are some things, be it apps, be it, what are the tools that the productive, organized person definitely is going to be well served to have in their toolbox?
In terms of capturing content and finding it and searching it, making it available to you no matter where you are in the world and whatever time of day it is, probably one of my favorites is Evernote. And because there's so many things that you can use Evernote for, and I think that it's very, very, very popular.
Right.
The equivalent is OneNote in Microsoft, or you don't have to make a choice, maybe, unless you're in a corporate world. So Evernote, in terms of an all-inclusive capturing tool, and you can tweak it to be your task management tool. So you can you can run your whole life through Evernote.
Yeah, you can.
You really can. So that's pretty cool. So that would have to be, that's the one that pops into my head the most. In terms of, I already referred to the one called Fences, in terms of really creating a great way to manage your digital desktop. Then, what are some other ones? My favorite apps, Say It and Mail It. I don't know if you use
I've never
Say
used
It and
that.
Mail It.
What's that?
So it's, well, I think maybe I'm just so used to it. It was the precursor to voice memos.
Okay.
So Say It and Mail It is, picking up your phone, you give yourself a voice message, send it in, and can process that way. Dragon Dictation, phenomenal. I think Dragon's a phenomenal product. Paid versions, and then there's free versions that you can get. So you can actually dictate to yourself, and it comes out in a text form. iJot, have you used iJot?
That's the video one, right? I've not used it.
It's an email you can do. I would think you would love this. So rather than sending an email, you just hit the little iJot camera, and it sends a video email. So from whatever, Gmail or Outlook or whatever you use. It's pretty cool. You don't have to do it and send it and then attach it to an email. It's just interfaces. You go out and do iJot. Another thing that comes to my mind, people spend a tremendous amount of time on the internet, right?
Well,
So-
you know what? You know Brian Tracy.
Yes.
So Brian Tracy was just here in this office a couple weeks ago, and he was telling me, and I don't know where he got the stats from, but he says the average teenager right now, at a certain age, I think he's like around 15 or something, is spending an average of in America 11 hours a day looking at screens. He's like, they're
wow.
screenagers, not even teenagers.
Yeah, that's a great term,
And
huh?
so There's a lot to be, yes, so people spend a lot of time on the internet.
A lot of time on the internet, so tools that can help with that. There's one's tools and one's just learning to leverage whatever technology you have. So learning to leverage the ability to use search functionality to actually find stuff on the internet rather than putting in one word and getting 50 million hits on it, how to kind of use the search capabilities there, you know, whichever browser you use. But then there's like cloud aggregators that there's one called Cloud Cafe that will allow you to take all of these different repositories where you're storing things in the cloud and basically set up a portal so that you can see all of those things from one portal page rather than, you know, going out to the individual repositories. So cloud aggregators, Chrome, I'm a Chrome browser user for the most part, and so there's one called OneTab, so if you've got a bunch of tabs open, it actually consolidates those into one page, and so you can look and sort and find, you're putting yourself in a lot better position to find a tab that's open rather than clicking across the top on all the tabs or along the bottom on other tabs. So that's a great little tab aggregator. Chrome has something called Bookolio that is, again, it's kind of puts out this ability with an icon to, it takes all of the bookmarks you created within Chrome and then it gives you kind of a flat surface. I'm struggling for the word. First, you know, one-dimensional ability. You don't have to click and go to a drop-down menu. It kind of just brings it up on a screen, and you can conform that to work real well for your needs. So.
Awesome. No,
those are a couple really fun ones.
That's very helpful. I like hearing stuff like that. So, what I'd like to do with the time we have remaining is, whatever suggestions, based on what you've said, for someone that's listening, saying, you know, I really want to take this on. I want to have organizational, digital, you know,
sanity.
Yeah, and literacy. You know, just like financial literacy. You know, if you don't know how to read financials, you can have the best, you know, accurate numbers, but if you can't decipher them, you're not going to do anything with it. So, how does someone get the literacy? What are the things they need to do? So they've watched this. You know, we've piqued their interest, or they kind of have a good idea of where they want to go. How do you maintain it? How do you not only get good at something, but stay good at it? How do you take this on?
The best analogy that I could give you is, you have I would guess you have somebody, you used to have somebody that did cooking for you. And
yes, now I actually order most of my food from a really healthy food service that delivers food to me weekly. Pete's Paleo.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm very much a paleo eater. So I don't eat dairy. I don't eat much gluten. So I'm very much, you know.
And then what about a personal exercise trainer?
I have a personal trainer named Christina.
Okay, and why do you have those people in your life?
Because I know how to work out and I know how to eat, and I'm actually a really good cook. My time is valuable, and I will work out more intensely with a trainer than if not. Times that I won't, or if I simply need to listen to like some audio and I just want to work out on because I do work out on my own, you know, too. But I typically train with a trainer a minimum of 2 to 3 times a week when I'm on a good schedule, unless I'm traveling. And so I work out with someone, because it's just it's not the highest and best use of my time, you know. And I just function better when I have expertise and I have someone helping to push me.
Okay. And I think that's the point I'm driving at. It's part of it's accountability. Part of it is it's their genius, so it should be their job. So it's kind of like not your genius, not your job. Somebody that can keep you accountable in terms of helping you. So if we go back to the whole digital realm and digital clutter and maintaining, you know, sanity around that, having a coach, just like folks have a coach around eating or a coach around their business coach, their life coach, their athletic coach, somebody with the expertise that can help an individual create the skills that they need to be the best that they can be in that particular area is a starting point, and that can help them be accountable, help themselves be accountable. And so that's the starting point. And what was the other piece of your question?
Well, maintaining it. So not only how do you get it, but how do you maintain it?
Strictly in the digital clutter world, it's kind of creating the best practices and methodologies of there's the daily practice at the end of each day before you shut down the computer for the night. Let's say you're at work or whatever, and you actually do shut down your computer.
Yeah.
It's kind of resetting, putting all those homeless documents in a place where they actually belong.
Right.
Dumping your download folder, processing your email to kind of as near zero as you could,
Right.
deleting things that you don't need. So sort of this end of the day checklist, just like you could equate it to when a nursing folks change shifts, and they have the checklist. Okay, this is the end of the shift. This is what we're going to do.
Right.
Then they're positioned to go back at work with a fresh start instead of all the stuff there, and then actually committing to and putting on your calendar. Do we want to have a decluttering session or make an agreement personally with yourself? Do you want to declutter once a month? Do you want to declutter semi-annually? If you're a corporation, do you want to give your entire organization the value of having an annual digital decluttering day? Barbara Hemphill probably can talk about this as well. This idea of a productive environment day where a corporation can go in and give permission to their entire staff. We're not going to work today on anything else. We give you permission to declutter your digital environment. And here's an expert that's going to show you how to do this. And here's an expert that's going to help you create the systems so that you can maintain these over time. But we're going to do this every 6 months, or we're going to do this every year. So
no, I like the
would be
idea of that,
maintaining
turn to making it fun. And if you could actually bring that into like government or some institutions, a productive day, that might be that one day they actually get something useful done. I mean, that would be good. So, okay, resources that you've created. Talk about that, where people need to go, and if they want to work with you or anyone that they want to find expertise. Where you're, refer whoever you want, so that we can leave all of the people watching and listening to this with resources on how to continue down this path, because I don't think it would be even humanly possible in a short period of time to do a talk and instantaneously someone's like an organizational expert. I mean, this is like working out. I mean, we can set the stage, but at this point, the people that really want it are gonna, they're gonna have to do their push-ups. So, but they can get a trainer and then get help.
They can get a trainer, they can get help.
What are the resources you have, and where do they find them?
So to connect with me personally, it would be through a company website called Simplicated, or on Facebook. And then this team that I'm here teaching with, we've actually we've come up with a term, and we call it prodigitivity, which is the term we have given to this approach. Prodigitivity.
Okay.
We had the whole audience saying that today.
How many times did it require? Prodigitivity.
You got it. See? Okay. Prodigitivity. And we have this kind of our landmark product is a course called Finding Digital Sanity. And then we've launched it in a webinar-based format, and then we're also bringing it in as a standalone, staff, a corporation saying, I'm going to take my staff out of their regular duties, and we're going to do the 5 sort of things that I spoke about. We're going to declutter, we're going to create some structure, we're going to create approaches in terms of how to capture information, how to process it, how to find it again. So that can be found at a website called Finding Digital Sanity. And the other gals associated with that, Jocelyn Coverdale, she's a team member, and she's out on we've got the whole nation covered here. She's out on the East Coast in New England. And then Lori Vanderkraal, she lives up in Iowa, and then I'm on the West Coast in Portland, Oregon. And so, any of the 3 of us, in terms of our ability to help an individual or an entire organization move towards a more digitally stable place,
that's it.
We're the folks to get a hold of.
Okay, awesome.
I'll confidently say that.
Wonderful, and you should. I mean, I'm going to put this as a bonus on ilovemarketing.com. So you got all these crazy marketers, and I mean, you got to promote. Shameless self-promotion.
Yeah.
Well, first off, if you're good, I don't think there's any shame. There's I mean, if you are awesome at what you do, I remember this little sugar packet I saw, and I don't eat sugar, by the way. It was in some restaurant in the middle of nowhere years ago, and I have this weird brain that just remembers really bad jokes and quotes. And it said, the caption was advertising. It said, "He who has something to sell and whispers in a well is not as apt to make the shiny dollar as the guy that climbs the tree and hollers." And I remember that.
There you go.
So I'm big on any final thing. Favorite books? Anything that was really profound, impactful on your thinking that helped you learn what it is you know that would be worth mentioning?
For me personally, again, I'm an avid reader. So David Allen, you know, his things. There's an author by the name of Graham Alcott, and he's out of the United Kingdom, and it's called Think Productive, and it's similar, but great content, great. He has a very holistic approach, maybe a little broader approach than David Allen's approach in terms of just some other things that he weaves into it, sort of some best practices that he weaves into it. And then in terms of the digital realm, you know, most of the books are sort of online books.
Right.
I'll read. So those would be the two that I would kind of pick towards. There's got to be some other ones. Trying to blank though.
Well, just put them on your website. So
Okay.
spell your website, and then we're
wrapping it up.
we're leaving it up to these people to start their process. So how do you spell Simplicated?
So SIMPLICATED.
Awesome.
Simplicated.
Wonderful.
Awesome. Thank you, Joe.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
It's always a pleasure. And for all of our listeners, I'd love to hear your biggest areas of angst and stress and frustration, and I'll share these with Tracy. And if she wants to comment, then you can, if you are watching this on ilovemarketing.com or on geniusnetwork.com, just post your comments there, and we'll see what happens.
Excellent.
So thank you.
Thank
I appreciate
you,
it.
sir. All right. Pleasure.
Yep.